Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. My name is Alejandro Berry. I'm a sports anchor for Televisa, for Univision, and for 2DN. I'm very happy to be here with you for the very first Summit Liga MX 21. And I'm happier even because I am now joined by a very special guest. Let me do a quick introduction of who Rasmus Ankersen is. He is obviously co-director of football for Brentford, who is back in the top fight after 74 years. They will be playing in their very first Premier League season. He is also chairman for Midtjylland, the Danish club, who is just made an appearance in the Champions League season, last season, by the way. He's an author, he's a business consultant, he's a public speaker. So you're a pretty busy guy, Rasmus. We appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
So I guess my first question would be, how do you do it? Because how do you manage your time? Because most people would feel overwhelmed with only one job. And here you are having 2, 3, maybe even 4 high-profile jobs. And you seem to be doing quite all right.
Well, yeah, there are busy times for me. One at the moment is one of them because it's obviously the transfer window, and this is my peak time of the year. So the thing is that Midtjylland and Brentford have a common ownership. Matthew Benham is the owner, so I kind of work for him, and my job is to overlook Midtjylland as a chairman and as a co-director of football to overlook the football department of Brentford.
Did I miss anything, by the way, in the introduction, or did I get it more or less right?
No, I mean, that's what I spend most of my time doing today. I've written a few books in the past, and I've been, doing all kinds of stuff, giving talks about the books to various companies around the world. And, but I think it all comes together, and I'm trying to implement these ideas in the clubs that I help run. How do you build a high performance culture? How do you find undervalued talent? Things like that.
Very successful books, may I add, some of them bestsellers. So Rasmus, would you say that data and analytics and innovation is the common denominator for how you manage both of your clubs?
Well, I think both clubs have been disadvantaged in the sense that they've been competing against clubs in their leagues that have bigger budgets. And when you're up against someone with more money, obviously, if you got to win, you have to do something different. And we've tried to do a variety of things different. And one of them has to do with data, and we use data a lot in recruitment. And in general, I would say that we have quite a data-driven culture in the sense that in a very emotional industry like football is, it's a competitive edge to be rational and to be clear in your decision making, because at the end of the day, my job is about making good decisions, and data can help us do that. So Brentford and Midtjylland are about a lot more than just data, but it would be correct to say that it's a big part of our thinking. It's a big part of what we do.
Can, especially nowadays, money overwhelm data and analytics, and no matter what you do, you'll never be able to compete or to win against the bigger clubs with bigger budgets? I mean, is it just about reducing the distance, or can you really end up beating them on the pitch?
Yeah, I think Brentford especially has shown that it is possible to compete with the clubs even though they have bigger budgets. I mean, Brentford is probably mid-table this season on player budget, but has managed to promote to the Premier League. Midtjylland has also been quite some distance behind, Copenhagen and Denmark, and still managed to win 3 championships, and this year sensationally qualified for the Champions League group play. So it's definitely possible, but I would say that I'm not so naive that I think that money doesn't matter in football, because it does. And I think for any football club, it's important to know what is your strategy from a football point of view, how you're going to be different, but it's also important to understand how you're going to make your money, as a club. What is your business model? Because gradually over the past years, we've been able to increase our salary budget. And we've done that because we have reinvested the profits that we made through player trading. So I'm not sitting here saying that finances don't matter. I think they matter a lot in football. It's one of the most important things. But there is other things you can do to get an edge, things that are not expensive.
Is there any current big clubs in football that apply this method, that use data and analytics as a model of decision making? And if not, what would happen if they would, especially considering their budgets?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm not into exactly what goes on at other clubs, so I prefer not to talk too much about that. I would say that I think a lot of, I think this is a general thing, not just in football, but generally speaking, that a lot of innovation tend to come from people who have constraints, budget constraints, other kinds of constraints, because that is what forces you to think different. If you have abundance of resource, you don't have to throw as much brain power at the problem because you can throw enough money at it. So I think there's a kind of a fundamental thing that innovation often comes from, not the richest, but sometimes the one who has to overcome obstacles and constraints. The other thing I would say about that is that it's important to have good models. It's important to have good algorithms. It's important to have access to good data, but it's only part of the story. I think the way you use it is probably more important. And I think probably a lot of clubs use data today and also do it in a sophisticated way. But I think also in many clubs, it's something that goes on with two interns in the basement. Okay. And it's probably that may be, I think, where we are probably a bit different, because with us, it's kind of driven right from the top, from the owner, from myself, so I often say, the test for me of whether you are a truly data-driven organization, the question that would test that is data part of the most important decisions? Does data have a big say in the most important decisions? In a football club, that is, when do you let go of the head coach? Who do you hire as a head coach? What players do you buy? How do you sell? That's the most important, how does your strategy look like? If data is part of those decisions, then I think you can call yourself a data-driven culture. But if it's just two interns in a basement that work and that works with the data, and then when it comes to the big calls, then it's not really part of it. I don't think data is part of the culture, and I think there's a really important distinction when we talk about this.
Can you reach a point where just too much data is too much, and instead of helping, it hurts? Like getting lost in numbers and taking away the feel of the game and the decision making based on observation and on gut feeling. At the end of the day, experience is also valuable here.
Of course. And data, we use data in recruitment, but we watch a lot of football as well. We use our eyes, we collect all the kinds of data, but it's not just about models and algorithms. But I think in football, there is a disconnect between what I would call the IQ guys and the EQ guys. And the IQ guys, that's the quants and the statisticians. They crunch the data. Okay, they're very bright. They answer a lot of questions. The EQ guys on the other side of the table, that's the coaches. They've been in the game for so long. They make decisions on gut feel and intuition. And both skill sets are important, but they don't speak well together. And I think that's the problem. So it means that the IQ guys with the data, they end up answering a lot of questions. But the problem is no one has asked those questions. And that's why we have ended up with useless stats like possessions and pass completion rates and things like that don't really tell anything. Okay? So when you work with data, I think the questions you ask are as important as the data. You have to ask the right questions. What is it that you want to know that you currently don't know? And if you knew that, then that would change your decision making. It has to start that way, and then you can use the data. That'll be one observation on that. What I also want to say, like data,
goal differential and shots fired and etc. No, some statistics.
That depends on what club you are. I mean, what are the key information you want to drive your decision making? Well, the other thing I want to say is that data is not just algorithms and models. It's a lot of other stuff too. So data is also what you watch. With 5 scouts watch a player, that's data. So another, you have to define data quite broadly, I think. So one thing we've done, I think fairly successfully, is that whenever we sign a player, we try and look at what are the fans of that club saying about the player. We're scraping the fan forum because, a fan, if 1,000 fans have watched the same player 50 times, and there is a consistent pattern in what they say about him, that's very valuable data. I would say that's more valuable for me than what 2 of my best scouts say if they watch the player twice. Because this is wisdom of the crowd, if you will. And I think there is so data is many things, is sometimes misunderstood in the sense that it's just about models or algorithms, but data is many things, and that's important to understand as well.
Yeah, I mean, because just thinking about it, when you decide to sell a player, for example, if they offer more than he's worth, then the natural thinking or decision is let's sell. But maybe he's the leader in the group, and how do you measure leadership in that sense? So you need to balance out every single element to, at the end of the day, make a determination based not only on numbers, but also on accumulative experience, I guess, right?
Yeah, but you also have to be careful with the narratives you tell yourself and the stories you tell yourself about a player and the emotional side. There's many factors that goes into a decision about who to sell a player or how to put the squad together. What we do is we work with there's so many opinions in football. So we try and work with what we call a squad model, which is basically a color coding of different type of players that we want the squad to consist of. How many players do we want that has a resale value in the team? How many players do we want that's just, have experience and don't have to offer any resale value? So we get the composition of those profiles right. And because we are a club where our business model is built on, we have to drive a profit from player trading. Obviously, we have to buy players that have resale value, but in other clubs, that may not be that important because they have other really good revenue streams, for example, from a big fan base or something like that. Then it's maybe less important for them that the players they have a resale value, maybe more important that they deliver something from day one. So, I mean, different models for different clubs. I just think you have to know what is your model.
Yeah, so many opinions in football and everyone thinks they're right.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Rasmus, I'm just curious about this. Could you apply this model, this data, this analytics, this innovation in a national team, for example, in terms of maybe selection of players?
Yeah, it doesn't. Whether you're a national team or you're a club team, you're trying to put together the best possible team, right? I think the purpose of a national team is slightly different than for a club, because the purpose of a national team is kind of to win a tournament or qualify for a big tournament. So what you're kind of looking for there is short-term performance. Whereas in a club, you obviously you can have different models. There may be a club where it's all about playing like 21-year-old players because your whole business model is built around player trading. I think you would not be a national team and get away with just playing 21 years old if you had a lot of 25, 26, 27-year-old players that were better. So there is a different purpose with a national team, I think. But, when you put the team together, you're trying to achieve the same thing. You want to build the best possible squad.
Yeah. I mean, is there a way, for example, to apply this in a league to seek maybe collective growth instead of on an individual basis going team for team, or no?
To apply what?
Like data and analytics and model of innovation in a league itself, like MLS or Liga MX or the Spanish League or the Premier League, in terms of for a collective growth instead of just depending on each team doing their individual thing, you know?
Yeah, I think the league has to, obviously competing. Within a league, you're competing against each other, but you also have to work together, and you have to build the best possible league. You have to build, the stronger the market gets in terms of being able to sell players for large amounts. The better it is for everyone. I mean, a lot of clubs when they buy would look at what are transfer fees typically when you buy from this league, and if you are able to collectively drive up a reputation for selling at high prices, I think that benefits everyone in the league. So I'm a big believer in that, and I think the probably actually the Mexican league, but also to an extent the MLS, probably have a bigger tradition for that than we have some in some places, some countries within Europe, I think.
So Rasmus, let me touch on a controversial subject, and that's VAR. How do you think VAR has impacted the game and impacted the way you manage your teams? Does it make it easier because it gets rid maybe of human error in terms of some decisions, and suddenly it's clear for you to see what's the truth about it? Or what do you make of VAR?
Well, so in the championship this season, there's not been VARs, and but there's been quite of occasions where I would have wished there'd been VAR. But now next season in the Premier League for Brentford, obviously there will be VAR, and that's going to be a different story. And in Denmark with Midtjylland, there's been VAR in the Champions League. That we actually qualified to the Champions League group stages because of a VAR decision. The goalkeeper in the final playoff game against Slavia Prague jumped slightly too early, so we got another penalty, and we then scored and qualified. So, like, this is the thing in football, like, really, really small margins have huge impact. The ball hits the post, the referee overlooks a mistake, overlooks a penalty, and, that costs you 20 million, euros, So as a fundamental principle, I'm a big supporter of VAR. And I'm also that because I look at it from an ownership, from an investment point of view. And I think there's already so much randomness in football, and it's already so high risk that I think if you can get closer to less randomness, or at least less mistakes, it makes it a better investment case. In terms of the emotion of the game, I think this was always going to be this. There are always going to be problems when you start doing such a big change. But I think when technology develops over time, it's going to get better and better. For example, I think it's just a matter of time before you will have automatic offside, like automated. So you don't you just basically have technology saying was it onside or offside, and you'll have an instant decision. So you don't have to sit and wait for it. So over the next years, we will see technology develop. So we will have a more fair game, but also can maintain that emotion in the game that we already lost. So I think it's not perfect, but I think it's going to get better. And I think eventually in 5-10 years time, we will all be really happy that this has come into the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Technology is definitely here to stay. So Rasmus, can data and analytics change in a way the current market and the crazy value of some of the players? Clubs are paying, I don't know, maybe 200 million for a single player. Maybe if the teams are doing their analysis through data and numbers, they'll realize later on, you know what, we're not paying what the real worth of a player is. So maybe there's some changes in the market to come as well out of this.
Yeah, it's definitely an inefficient market, and I kind of like it to be, because that is what gives you opportunities to find good deals and find players that are misvalued by the market, or mispriced by the market. So I think that's what provides the opportunity to have an efficient market. I don't want all clubs to be rational. I don't want them to be all making good, rational, data-driven decisions, because then it'll be less of an advantage. But eventually, that's where it's going to go. That's what happens in any industry. Over time, it becomes more efficient, and it's going to be harder and harder to really get an edge. So yeah, that
is a trend, right? I mean, teams incorporating this data and analysis to make decisions on who stays, who goes, and the big decisions that one needs to do in football clubs.
Yeah, it will come in. It will. It's already come in the last 5 years, and it's going to accelerate even more. Like, there will be much more data coming into football. There will be much more. I think there will be smart people coming in. There will be technology will change the way the transfer market operates. It will change. The way you recruit, it's going to change. It happens in other industries. It's going to come to football too.
So I'm curious about this. Do numbers say that Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, for example, are the best players in the world, or are we being lied to about that as well?
That the Mexican players are better, or what is it?
No. That players like, for example, Cristiano and Messi, who we all regard as the best players in the world, is that backed up by numbers and data as well? Or
they've been. I mean, if you look at the data, those guys have been unbelievable for a decade now. I don't think we ever seen such dominance from two players, and so. But this is the thing, like, individuals makes a big difference in football, but they makes less of a difference than they do in basketball. Individuals, it's much easier to close down one player in football than it is to do it in basketball. So this is something, that's the decision you always have to make, I think, when you put together a team. Do you want to improve the weakest links, or do you want to improve the strongest links? Where do you get the most return on investment? And that's one of the strategic decisions you got to make all the time. But there is no doubt that these players will have made a huge difference. But unfortunately for the most of us, they are out of reach.
I want to talk a little bit about Brentford, because it's just an amazing story and narrative, and what you've done is simply fantastic and historic as well. Can you take us through a little bit of what happened when you arrived to the club, and where you were then and where you are now? Because, I mean, people must be going crazy with Brentford playing the first Premier League season in its history.
Yeah, it's been it's a huge thing. I mean, it's 74 years, and since they were in the top flight of English football. And I've spoken to, it's an old club, more than 100 years old, the club. So you got a lot of second, third generation fans. And it's been very touching to speak to them, because a lot of these guys, the vast majority of their lifetime, they've seen Brentford in League Two and League One. And seeing them in the Premier League now is something they never thought would be possible in their lifetime. So it's made a lot of people proud to achieve this. So I came to Brentford. I was 1 year at Midtjylland in 14-15, and then I was brought into Brentford too, as working alongside a guy called Phil Giles. We were co-directors of football. We still are, to basically run the football department. And so we've done that for 6 years now. And it's been a question of really establishing the club in the first place. They were promoted from League One, so establishing in the championship, establishing ourselves in the top 10, and then like really slowly improving the club. Season by season, we've been able to drive some really good profits on player trading. But we bought players cheap and we sold them very expensive, and the profit we've then reinvested in the squad, and that has eventually led us to come to a position where last year we were so close. We lost the playoff final to Fulham, and this year, fortunately, we got it right and won. It's football in the championship. It's a relentless league. 46 games. And at the end of the day, we've been in the playoff final twice. It comes down to 90 minutes of football, and if you win, you're in heaven. If you lose, you're in hell. It's pretty brutal. But we've just been trying to do all we can to increase the probability of this happening. You know, we knew it was. We also need a bit of luck at times, but that's what we've been trying to do. Just do everything we can, optimize processes, and try and make better decisions all the time to increase the probability of promotion.
The search for consistency, right? And you were right there, knocking on the door, season in, season out, and you finally made it. So congratulations to you and to all the team. What would mean a successful season for you guys at Brentford next season in Premier League?
So the mindset I'm really trying to instill within the organization with players and with my staff is to be risk willing. I think in the Premier League there's a lot of risk aversion. You know, a lot of them play to not be relegated. Yeah? And I think if we go into that with that mindset, I think we're going to struggle. But we need to go in and attack and take some risks. You know, we still got to be true to our model and try and find players from leagues, from teams where maybe other clubs don't think they will be able to go into the Premier League, but we think they fit our model and will do. So the key thing for me is that we may relegate. I don't think we will, but we may relegate again. But if we do, we've taken enough risk. We've done everything we could. We really got into the league with an attacking mindset. That's what I like to see.
Do it bravely, right? I mean, a lot of teams, and you're right, play with this fear of losing that it paralyzes them. So I like the strategy, and I hope you don't relegate. Rasmus, I'm curious to know, do you know anything about Mexican soccer, about Mexican league, Mexican football? How much is it talked about? If it's talked about over there in England or in Denmark? Or what is the perception you guys have of Mexican football over there?
Well, so I've never been in Mexico to watch a game. I've been in South America quite a bit, but at Midtjylland, we focused our recruitment more on Brazil. So I've been there a lot. But not in Mexico. Obviously, I know some of your top players that played in Europe. I know it's a very passionate football country. I'm intrigued.
Well, we have Raúl Jiménez in Wolverhampton who got injured, but he's probably our best player.
Yeah. And actually, I hired a Mexican for my staff in Brentford, Bernardo Cueva. I hired him last summer. So he's been with us. So he's told me a lot of things about Mexican football. He taught me a bit. And he's a passionate football fan, like most Mexicans are. And he's a great guy. We really enjoy working with him. So we got a little bit of a Mexican connection there.
Let him teach you about Mexican food as well. Tacos and picante.
Yeah, no. We love that. We love that.
So we talked a little bit about Brentford. I want to get into Midtjylland just for a second. You obviously came in and you won the first championship in the club's history. And how has it been since then? I mean, you've had appearances in Europa League. You had a great result against Manchester United, for example, Champions League as well. Where do you think Midtjylland as a club is right now, and where is it going in the near future? So
Midtjylland is my childhood club. You know, that's where I grew up. I've been living in London now for 12 years, but I grew up in Midtjylland. I played there. I coached there. So I suggested Matthew Benham to take a look at Midtjylland, and he bought the club, and that's where I became the chairman. And obviously, it's been very big for me to be part of winning the first championship in the club's history. We then won another 2 championships, and we qualified for Europa League. We qualified for Champions League. So we've achieved a lot in 7 years, and we made it a good business too. It's been an incredible journey. I think there's a culture of innovation naturally at Midtjylland. It's a small town. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's no natural advantages there. You have to be different. You have to think. You have to work harder. You have to try new things if you want to compete with the big cities. And that mentality is very much alive in the club. So I'm I'm really proud of what we've achieved there, and I think there's still a lot more to come from that club.
Yeah, and I mean, people must be happy as well with the club because it's a very emblematic team as well, right?
It's a very
historic, traditional team in
no, it's not. No, not at all. Actually, it's very different. So Midtjylland is only a bit what now 22 years old. Okay. So Midtjylland was founded in 1999, and it was a merger of two local clubs that hated each other.
Oh,
but none of them had any money, so they went together, and that became Midtjylland. So they started out in the second tier, and then promoted, and it's been an amazing story. So it's actually a very new club that has to create a fan base from almost day one, a new fan base, and as I said, there's been lots of circumstances going against the club, but it's been an amazing story, really.
Yeah, and I imagine that one of the goals is making a dent, right, in European football, because I mean you've been successful locally, of course, in the Danish league. You've won multiple championships, but then it's hard going and competing against the big boys in Europa League and then in Champions League as well.
Yeah, but that's what our ambition is. We once you won the championship, and you've done it again and again, then you want to go further. And I don't think we ever imagined we could go into the Champions League, because it's quite
that must have been an experience.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we came into the Champions League in a season where there were no fans in the stadium, so that was a shame. But the experience was still a big one for us. I think we did well, and it was unbelievable. Hopefully we can do it again. It's certainly given people appetite for more.
I want to thank you very much, Rasmus, for joining us here today in the Liga MX Summit. This is the first one we've done. We'll keep on doing them. So we would always love you to be with us and to just talk football and talk numbers and talk statistics, because it is the future, right? I mean, do you think that your model is the future of football?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely have no illusions that we are perfect and we have cracked the code. I'm always open to listen and learn from other clubs, and I'm sure we can learn a lot too from what the clubs do in Mexico. So yeah, I'd love to come and watch your game one day and hear more about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we'll be glad to have you over. Rasmus Ankersen, I want to thank you very much for joining us in this Liga MX Summit. Thank you. We really appreciate your time, and I hope to speak to you soon, Rasmus. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Rasmus Ankersen in the Liga MX Summit. Now I throw it back to you guys in the studio. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Alejandro. Mucho gusto en saludarte. Y el Midtjylland, un equipo que no con mucho presupuesto, Sara, ha logrado cosas importantes, muy meritorias en la Champions.
Sí, sin duda alguna te habla de esas historias de repente de Cenicienta, ¿no? Lo vimos mucho con el Leicester, pero el Midtjylland lo hizo clasificando a Champions, teniendo un buen resultado frente al Manchester. Y el Brentford, veremos cómo le va ahora en su regreso a la Premier League. Lo había dicho él, es otro objetivo, pero ya cumplimos el sueño de regresar después de tantos años. Y eso simplemente con base en trabajo y muy buenas visorías para conseguir lo que necesitaba el equipo.
Dijo algo muy interesante con respecto a lo azaroso del juego del fútbol, cómo un balón puede pegar en el poste y eso cambia el rumbo de un partido y cambia un resultado y cambia un destino y te cuesta 20 millones de euros. Interesante esta parte de un deporte profundamente humano, el más bello de todos para el gusto de muchos de nosotros, pero que con este azar de un esférico que puede botar y rebotar y moverse hacia caprichosas direcciones, puede modificar el rumbo definitivo de un resultado y por consiguiente costar mucho dinero o ganar también mucho dinero en caso de que ese balón entre en la portería contraria.
Sí, completamente. Centímetros, milímetros hacen la diferencia en cualquier partido. Les recordamos el hashtag #SummitLigaMX para que sigan comunicándose con nosotros, nos den sus comentarios y aquí la agenda del día. A continuación, el entrenamiento HIIT y la prueba IFT 3015. También tendremos cambiando el juego apuntando al éxito del fútbol femenil y la innovación en infraestructura.
Perfecto, volveremos en